I call this video True Black History, and my references are Google and Wikipedia. And I use common sense and inferences, and that'll be obvious when I get to them. I'm going to start off with my two of my favorite Bible verses. One is definitely in my favorite, possibly my favorite, and they're very applicable to everything. Actually, 1 John 4:8, he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. So God is love, and if you don't love, then you don't know God. And it's talking about real love. 1 John, that was 4:8, and this is 1 John 1:8. He who says and this isn't word verbatim, but he who says he has no sin makes God a liar, and the truth is not in him. So if I claim I don't have any sin and I'm perfect, or if I claim I got saved and I'm saved from addiction and I've never had a relapse again, that could be true, but that doesn't make me sinless. That doesn't make a person sinless, and I'm not a believer in God. They credit God with all that. You have to break your own habits. So sometimes God does miracles, but usually you break your own habits. And sometimes if you did it for those reasons to claim, some people do it for pride. Some people not actually do it, I guess. But I don't want to get into that debate, whether taking medicine is a sin or not. When it's a sin, we'll say. Because it's not a sin to take medicine proper. All right, so you have, Black History Month every year. And they don't use Black History Month to talk about Black history. They use Black History Month to make everybody feel like slavery never ended, to make everybody think that slavery was created in America, to make everybody, those kind of things. They do it to hurt Black people. They use Black History Month to hurt Black people and make them feel, and make them want revenge on all the people who had nothing to do with it. So I'll start with just saying it was only 6%. Now who were 6% white, not white people. 6%, 6.5% of people who own slaves in America, and that's when you combine the North and the South, because the percentage is about 13% for the South and 0% for the Yankees, right? So I cut, when you add the whole population, you can split it right in half, 6.5%. That's how I get that number. And but in the South, and the Democrat side of society, it was the Democrat Party, right? And so I'll just make that point while I'm on it. The Democrat Party is the party of slavery. The Democrat Party hates Republicans because, and now the evidence that they hate them is that they lie about them being racist, which is, thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. They've ruined the whole country by doing that. They've stolen votes by lying. And so now some people got to be responsible, and you're supposed to be able to recognize lies and not love lies. So, but a lot of people don't know. They're not informed enough, or hadn't, because they also block people like me who tell the truth. And a lot of people may not see my video, or they've actually brainwashed people into keywords like, just to say this, Trump's not my favorite candidate ever. Marco Rubio is. But Trump's so close. He's one of my favorite. And but they've used a trick word. If you don't hate Trump, you're going to cut me off. You're not going to listen to anything. They've made you hate him that much and lied about him being racist that much that somebody's going to automatically assume that I'm racist or whatever. And the truth is, if you don't believe in God, then you're a racist. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ as God, you're a racist. That's the bottom line. And it doesn't matter if you're not specifically hateful of other ethnicities, but you don't believe in the account that we all came from one God, from Adam and Eve, and that we're one race from Noah's Ark after the flood, which scientists skip over when they claim they've searched out some whale bones they found in the Sahara Desert from tens of millions of years ago. No, they didn't. They're lying. The fact is, they're not mistaken. They lied. They're pretending they have all this information because of their special science skills. And they're lying, but then they say they can't make Lortabs and other medicines uh, improve them to where they're safer and less addictive. I think they do have the capability to do that, but they don't have the capability of carbon dating back to where before we even existed, because we didn't exist to carbon date us. I mean, the Earth didn't exist like to carbon date it. And then second of all, because carbon has a shelf life, you can't carbon date back as long as they say, because carbon has a shelf life. So those are two key things about that. So they're lying. But they're wanting to discredit the flood because that would prove we're one human race. Their whole motive's not about that. Their whole motive, I don't know what their motives are. You don't always know when somebody's lying what their motives are. They may have more than one. So they're lying and saying they're maybe lying because they're racist or because they like racist power. The separation, split. The old saying goes, divide and conquer. So they want power. They want world power. And just like Biden and them are doing now, you got the terrorist attack and they're acting like, then they go, climate change is more dangerous. It's more of a threat. All of a sudden they start saying that. And then they're claiming Islamophobia when the whole attack was started by Christianophobia. It's by, because Christ was born in Israel and crucified in Israel. The story of Christ is Israel, and they want to erase that memory and all that. So that's why they hate the Jews, because he comes from the Jews. His mom was Jew, and won't get into that all the way. But I switch it around and they're calling it Islamophobia. So phobia is I got off on this yesterday. I did a video that went 50 minutes and wouldn't download. So I'm not. I was doing two subjects. I'm just doing one. So I'm pretty confident here. But so I will touch on this while I'm here. Okay. So you have, so phobia is, the true definition of phobia is, irrational fear, basically. An irrational fear. Some things you should be cautious of. Fear in the sense of context of cautious. And you should be cautious about terrorism. But we shouldn't be afraid if you speak against Islam because you don't agree with Islam's theology, you should be able to debate that. You should be able to talk about it. And it's not a phobia. It's actually confidence, not a fear. If you're willing to talk about it, it's confidence in what you do believe, which there's only one thing to be confident in my view, and that's there's only one heaven explained and proven through resurrection of Jesus Christ and his ascension and his forgiveness on the cross. I mean, how else do you qualify to go to heaven without forgiveness? So from somebody who actually has the power to rise from the dead and ascend and never die again. And that's the only evidence of a proven God for a second life in heaven that we've ever seen on earth. And that should be a factual educational point and not a debate anymore, because he proved that when he came and did it. He said, look, I'm the only God. He says this in the Ten Commandments even. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And so he came and proved he's basically all other gods are false gods. They have to rise up and stand. If there's going to prove anything, they can't. He's saying they can't, but I'm saying that if they want to prove they're a real God, they'd have to do what he did, because there's no bigger feat than defeating death. I mean, we can do all these tricks and flips on bicycles out in the mountains and all these kind of tricks and stuff, and hope we don't die from it. But we can do some pretty interesting things, make airplanes even. But every pilot, every creator of an airplane, all die. They all end up dying if the rapture doesn't come first. So Jesus did a feat that nobody else, we've never seen before, and claims to be equal with God, one with the Father. And even when he talked to Satan in the wilderness after 40 days of fasting, and Satan came to tempt him, to tell him, if you be God, turn the bread into stone, the stone into bread, so you can. And he's always tempting him when he obviously would be hungry, and So God, right there, Jesus claimed to be God. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. So that's the one specific, direct word he had. But the reason he doesn't say his name specifically, and he's Son of God is God in the flesh. But they call it Son of God. And he put the seed into a woman. So but he's God in the flesh. I mean, so we've never seen God the Spirit. No man's never ever seen God the Father, God the Spirit. So, but he's the same person. And so people want to deny Trinity, but and act like God can't do something a little more supernatural than what we can. I mean, he's supposed to be able to, right? I mean, just in theory. So back to Black history. That's background, though, on where we're one human race, and so the Democrat Party has always been opposed to God. Now, they do support being hypocrite. There's a lot of people, oh, we believe in Christ, but then they promote Islam. And they call us, they won't always Islamophobes. And they're acting like that's the issue, when the truth is they're being humongous bigots right now. They have Palestine marching all over the country here, and they're the ones that let those ones in, and those are Hamas supporters. I'm not going against all Palestinians, but now most Palestinians are Muslim. But guess what? Because they silence speech, and you're not allowed to hear about the Bible. And so a lot of them don't want to be Muslim. That's how Islam is. I mean, you force people into Islam, or you scare people into Islam. And so a lot of Muslims who claim to be Muslim and support Islam actually have Islamophobia. They're afraid to walk out of Islam because they have closer to what you call Islamophobia. But what they're scared of is governmental people, authorities that will harm them, kill them, chop their head off, actually, if they don't stay with Islam. So it's not a phobia. That's a true fear. You should have caution and worry about that. But you should, if you knew that death matters and the only one that can rescue once death happens is Christ, you have to make a stance against it, or be calm and quiet until you can make an escape. But they're stuck. And a lot of them, now they believe it. A lot of them do actually believe it. They like the power. And so that's where you get Hamas. They like the power of the lie. It's a lie. So any time you have a false God, they're lying. They have no power of God. So, so here's the thing. We always forget about African slavery, and it was Islam. It's run by Islam. Still goes, So when they sold slaves to America, they were selling their criminals. They're serial killers out of prison. They emptied their prisons and sold slaves. That was a relief for them, right? That's the prisons. Work is a hard job. I mean, and when do you carry out the death penalty? I don't know how they did death penalty back then, but it was their thieves. And so then you had, we'll say, good slaves, bad slaves. You had the bad slaves, and I'm not saying everybody that stole something and went to jail is always a terrible person. Some could have done it once out of a desperate moment. But the ones that do it systematically, like we do through our drug cartels and stuff, they do it systematically, and they usually go prepared to kill the person if somebody tries to contest them. That's pretty common. If you're going to steal, it depends how you steal. The ones that steal out of stores don't always go to ready to harm somebody. But that's wrong too. I mean, I'm not saying you should steal from stores. You shouldn't. But they have, so the point is, let's get to the point. The point is, Britain was fighting America, trying to stop. Most people came to America, mostly white people, I guess you could say. It's not all white people either, that came to America for freedom, to enjoy trying to establish a new free government away from Britain and European countries, So, and because they were getting killed for reading the Bible. Only the Pope was allowed to read the Bible. So that was a theocracy at the time. Now, I'm not sure how the whole of Europe was, but that's how it was in Britain. And so the slavery, Spain and Portugal transported the most slaves. Now, because it's partly just because of where they're located. They're located right close to Africa. Portugal is. And so That probably had something to do with it, right? And they're Catholic. I'm not going to say now Catholicism's not all bad. It's like halfway good, but they haven't distorted the gospel. So they overdo it with Mary. The Pope's not in the Bible. Confession to a Pope and all that stuff, or however they do that. That's not biblical. But you can believe generally the Catholic stuff and be saved. Whereas Mormons, you cannot. Mormons, no. If you're Mormon, you're not going to Christ's heaven because they deny Christ as God. Catholicism does not deny Christ as God, but they've added things but they haven't distorted the gospel directly. So Catholics, but they got too much power and they got in with government and they were going where they were hanging people for reading the Bible. That's why people fled to America. That's probably the main thing that caused them to flee. And so, but everybody probably was in this, didn't agree with the government on other things. Runs to America, and there's not much here except there's, if you go now and try to walk from one city to the next, you're going to be stuck in woods today. That's today with millions of people living here. So it's not true that people came to take over Indians or anything. There was lots of open land back then, way more than there is now. Way more open land than there is now. You understand? So they didn't view, and the Indians did not have a united nation like the United States. They weren't an established nation. They had just different tribes. They were tribal. They had tribal lands, and they had their boundaries. They weren't a very high population. That's so. It's a lot of stuff they say about that is a lie, and they're trying to start fights. We've made peace with Indians. Generally, for the most part, there was peace made with Indians and whites, and a lot of Indians liked college. They liked learning to the farming instead of just hunting. And then some Indian tribes didn't. They were hunters, and they just wanted to keep their traditions. So it's not like what people say in history. Some Indians became slave owners in the South. And not just the black slaves. They had white slaves, Indian slaves. Britain brought 300,000 white slaves. So, and then you had 4,000, I think it was 4,000 black slave owners who owned 12,000 black slaves here in American South. And so the Democrats have lied because they're angry that the Republicans ended slavery. They're angry still. And so they lie about Abraham Lincoln. They make Black History Month they may have chosen February to cover up so they could celebrate or to hammer people and pretend all white people are responsible for slavery, pretend all white people had slaves. No, we didn't. No. And I don't even know my ancestry. As far as I know, mine didn't up through my ancestors, but I just know I've only studied back into the late 1800s, but based on most of my ancestry was from Minnesota and stuff. There was no slavery up there. So, but what if I was guilty of having some ancestors that did that? Do I think that those people should be punished and they may not even know they had ancestors like that. I don't think that they should be punished or hated for that. That if you're an ancestor and have no clue, you weren't in that government. So I disagree with all that revenge and hate, but Obama has tried to start fights between Indians and Americans again. He's in with the Palestinians taking over Israel, and that's a farce. That's not Israel's fault. Some people say Israel's at fault for some things. I'm not familiar with that, but there is the side of Israel who is the new Judaism, who does not believe in, they don't believe in Jesus being God. They reject that Jesus was the Messiah. See, the old Judaism in the Old Testament was true to the biblical views and was waiting for the prophecy of Jesus to come. I don't know if it's all of Judaism now, but a large portion of Judaism today still rejects Christ. So, and they're not going to heaven. So unless everything's based on your belief, an individual belief. Do I believe in Christ? Do I trust Christ? If I do, I'm welcome into heaven. It doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile. I guess I'm just Gentile, I assume. But, everybody's connected to the Jews, actually, from Noah's Ark, right? We're all connected to the Jewish line. We all came from the human being, right? So I don't know if you could say Jews started with Abraham, the Jewish nation, but it's possible you could say Adam and Eve were Jews. I don't know, but probably I don't really know that for sure. But so that's Black history. We could tie that in, by the way. That's Black history because you talk about where did the Black ethnicity come from, and it came from Noah's son Ham. So Ham he went south towards Africa when God changed language. We got ethnicity based on language, not skin tone. And so we were all brothers and sisters, now cousins or whatever, distant cousins. It's so I'm light brown. I'm beige. There's only beige and brown people in the world, and we're all a shade of brown. Beige is a shade of brown. So I'm beige, whether I get red tint or not. And there's a lot of the racist folks who hate on me for being, they could see my blush or redness through my skin, and they hate on Trump for being pink faced. But the truth is, that's not a pink skin. It's because you're light skinned. Everybody has capillaries, and you can see blood in the capillaries through the skin. And when your skin heats up, it gets red too. So when you blush or when you're hot, it turns red. And so does black people. So does dark skin. Dark skin turns the same color, but you can't see it because of their dark skin. You can't see it as well. So you can see it sometimes. I've seen people blush before, and you could tell if you're paying attention. Even with dark skin, that hey, they're blushing just like anybody, like me, I guess. So anybody, but you have I've seen it, and that wasn't a person that was particularly light skinned for black ethnicity. I saw blushing. I forget who it was or what it was, but I remember that happening where I noticed it. But so we all blush. We all have redness under our skin, pinkish under our skin. We all have that. But the skin comes from, scientifically speaking, comes from living by the equator close to the equator for years and years, a few thousand years after the language changed. There wasn't much integration, mixed marrying or anything like that after the language changed because it's hard to communicate. So, but near the borders there were, or, if you see Moses married, there's a debate on if she was black or from Saudi Arabia, but she lived in Ethiopia. Moses met his wife in Ethiopia. Some say she moved, and I haven't completed this study. It was a new thing I wasn't aware of. She could have been Arab who crossed over the Red Sea and lived in Ethiopia. But he met his wife in Ethiopia when he ran down to Ethiopia to get away from Egypt after killing the Egyptian he saw attacking a slave. And so some people say he just right out murdered the guy. Well, I think there was a fight, so I'm not confident he murdered him or if it was self-defense. But he followed through. He did end up killing him, and but he was killing him as he was beating somebody else, from that. And so he fled and ended up in Ethiopia, where he saw the burning bush and everything near there somewhere. And they were a Christian family. Ethiopia. They were, by all means, they didn't have the word Christian back then, but they believed in the God of the Bible, the prophecy of the Bible, apparently, from what I understand. And so whether she came from Saudi Arabia or Ethiopia, she was not the same ethnicity as Moses, and they married across ethnic lines, but they believed the same God. They believed the God of the Bible, right? So that's interesting too. But back then there was no Islam. Now there was worship of Baal and false idols and that in Egypt and stuff. I forget who all they worshiped, but you had you didn't have Islam. Islam didn't come until after 600 years or so after Christ. Muhammad created Islam. So when they talk about this connection to Abraham's son Ishmael and Isaac, and I don't know if they'd try to claim they came from Isaac, but no, the Jewish nation came from Isaac. Maybe that's why they're fighting over the land. That's not, the Jews have lived there ever since way back then. So it's not, there's not legitimate what they're doing, but they may be claiming that they got the sun switched. How would that happen over, your mama made sure that didn't happen back then. Their mom made sure that didn't happen. So you got mom and dad, right? They didn't have time to switch. Hey, let's go 100 years later and switch. They moved on to toward Saudi Arabia. But the Arabs. So you got Ham, Shem, and Japheth. We won't go into that. But you have, I'm not going to calculate that live here. So you have, so the Arab nation came from Ishmael. The Arab, not Arab nation, Arab ethnicity, Arabian ethnicity. And they spread, I guess they spread to Turkey and everywhere else, right? They just kind of spread out that way. So that by language. And there was no Islam. Muhammad died. Buddha died. The Hindu god, if there was one specific, died. None of them were able to prove they were as real like Jesus did. So those are just facts. So you got below the Sahara Desert. So the way you get dark skin, you live near the equator over time. And now your genes change to support that. But your vegetables, the regional fruits and vegetables have more vitamin D. More vitamin D darkens your skin. When I go out in the sun and get a tan, even if a darker skinned person goes out in the sun, they turn darker. But I go out and I turn tan and dark, sometimes burns, but I don't have, everybody has melanin, by the way. Everybody has melanin, not just the black ethnicity. They have more melanin, perhaps, than everybody else. But vitamin D has a lot to do. Vitamin D works like a hormone. You get vitamin D from the sunshine, and you get vitamin D to protect it. Your skin darkens and produces protection from the sun. So it's different near the equator, right? People over years and years, 2,000 years, whatever it was. Let's just summarize it. Let's continue on. All right. That's generally the scientific explanation for how people got darker skin, minus also your genes build and adapt to that. So you pass down that trait to your family, and it has variations. Sometimes, you got two darker skinned people and married, and then they have a lighter skinned child. Now I'll touch on one point while I'm here, because this is not the main point. There was actually breeding and stuff with the slavery in the United States, where they took the most athletic person and would breed a male, and they would breed them with lots of women to try to produce stronger offspring for the slavery. It was for slavery. And some people do that today, not for slavery, but just for black pride and stuff. For racist, they're being racist. Their views. So racism is actually, we've been tricked. Racism is huge in the black communities in America. And the black population has more racism than any culture in history, probably. Maybe Arabs come next, I don't know. But they have more racism, and they actually have guys that have 200 children and stuff just for racism reasons, right? And they do that, and that's not, nobody's supposed to do that. We're not supposed to have what you call multiple wives the way Mormons do it. So I would say a lot of drug cartels operate off, one of the reasons they like doing what they do, in a sense, they operate with multiple wives. And it's in the black culture particularly, I think. I don't know the white cartels cultures in the West much, but there's more of that. I would consider probably more white drug cartels in the West. There's some in Florida too. And so and that's because those are key points of entry, partly. So you have, and they like the weather and all that. But the beach parties, I suppose. You have, so the point is, like basketball. Like, I don't agree that that any ethnicity can play basketball. All right. So there's a lot of politics that go into how come there's not many white people who excel all the way to the top in basketball. Well, you do have Nurkic now, or whatever. What's his name? Jokic. But he's good. And you had Larry Bird. You got the guy from Dallas Mavericks. I forget his name, the point guard. You got, there are some. So it's not true, even though you have just a few. It's not true that white man can't play basketball, white man can't jump. You don't need to have 100 of them to prove it's not true. It's if it's one that can do it, then it's not true. The myth. But so it's cultural. You do have more athletic people, I think, in black culture. You also have more people interested in sports, playing sports in our black culture. So there's a lot of white people. I've known some who, for example, I played sports. I scored 29 points in the first quarter once, and we were blowing the team away so bad I sat the bench the rest of the game. So I could have scored 100 points at that pace, right? Over 120 points if I was going that pace and played 4 quarters. Well, and I did it because they double teamed our 3-point shooter. I was a guy that they didn't run plays to. I was the rebounder. I'd score 20. My best game was 24 points off of rebounds. No plays run to me. And so I was that guy, the trash man. But this particular day, my point guard kept passing me the ball. When they were triple teaming the guy, and they quit double teaming our 3-point shooter, trying to cover me. They were doing that, and then I'd get the and one because I'm good at shooting, taking the foul, and making the basket, and then getting the free throw. So I did that. But the coach didn't know me well because I took my junior. This is high school. Took my junior year off and didn't play basketball. So he only saw me the senior year. He didn't know that I was the backyard champion in a way. And 2-on-2, it's that kind of thing. My buddy was the champion in 21. There's a game called 21 because if you had a limit, if you go to the free throw line with a 3-shot limit, or you can go to the free throw line with hit till you miss. If we play hit till you miss, he'll get on the free throw line. If he gets 1 point on you and he gets to the free throw line, the game's over half the time. He'll get every free throw all the way to 21 points. So, but as far as when it comes to the physical side of playing one-on-one, if you were playing one-on-one direct, I would have been, minus being the best outside shooter, you can't stop me on the inside. So I could play ball, and I'm not tall. But so people, and I had met an NBA player that wanted me to come out for the team. And that person doesn't remember that. I talked to that person and they don't remember. But they did. He was in my PE class, and at the time he saw me playing basketball. He's like, "Why don't you come out for the team?" I'm like, "I'm not tall enough." But I was playing trump. I had injuries too. And I wear contacts and glasses, and contacts bothered me. And in basketball gymnasiums particularly, they'd cloud up back then, and I couldn't play with glasses. I don't know how Kareem did that and stuff, but it bothered me when your glasses get all wet and all that. I don't know how they do it. So that's something I wasn't, I had an broken wrist at the time, and didn't know it was broken. I found out later it was broken, but that kind of hindered me from wanting to do stiff. I wanted to be a running back potentially, but I had second thoughts about it because of my wrist, and I knew I would need to be able to stiff arm better. And so years later, I rebroke it, and they found a dead bone, and I had it X-rayed. I broke my wrist grabbing the rim of the basketball court. I got to stop this video, but I'm going to make my main points. But I during soccer practice, it was raining, so we went and ran laps in the gym, and I went up to grab the rim with both hands on a lap when I was running, and my left hand kind of missed, and I swung up and almost landed on my head, broke my wrist, and they missed it in the X-ray. I mainly jammed my neck. Lucky I didn't get killed on. You can get killed on something like that. You've seen people do it and survive, but you can easily die from or get a broken neck and get paralyzed. But you could easily crack your head open and die. But I jammed my neck real bad and hurt my wrist, and they missed it in the X-ray, and it never went back until 8 years later. So that's reasons I didn't try it in basketball and on the higher level. I was a big time into music, wanting to be a trumpeter, lead trumpeter and solo artist at the time. Then I had gotten sexually assaulted in college, not back at the college, but in the downtown area. And I was in a religious school, and I just changed my major and gave up on the music and all that. And then that was how I learned to start studying drug cartel. Really, I've sympathized with people out there. I wasn't angry about it, but for me, wasn't a big deal. Except it ruined my reputation because I had saved my first kiss for marriage. So And I knew how I felt completely rejected by the religious society once that happened. And I'm like, that's not right. I know God forgives me, and plus, it wasn't even my fault, you know. So, but and now I won't get into that. Everybody could say, "Oh, you know what you're doing." You can't. I can't confide in anybody on that. I'll always get blamed for it happening. That's everywhere I've gone. If I've ever brought it up, and I don't want to bring it up. But bottom line is, I'm just saying, I was open, became aware of a new culture when that happened. I changed my major. I quit the music. I didn't quit, but I quit doing it as a major. I kept trying to play trumpet, but trumpet. So as an athlete, I didn't put time into exercise year round and all that because I was playing trumpet and I was working manual labor in the summer and stuff. So you have. So I'm just saying it's not true that white people can't play sports. I outran most black men, and I never had a black man beat me in basketball till once during when I was going to rehab, and I was way out of shape, and he barely beat me. I just couldn't even catch my breath, and I do win with my feet and my speed. So it's not I don't win just on pure shooting skills, and so it was a close game. That's the only time I ever lost to a black person, and now I've quit games because I was winning, and then I've been in situations in gymnasiums where they start playing tackle on me, and because I'm winning, they can't. They got pride, and they can't be beat by a white guy. Certain ones, you know. So I've quit those games, but I was winning. I had to quit because I wasn't trying to get killed, right? Or I wasn't trying to get my. Really, back then I was thinking I was still playing trumpet. Didn't want my lip busted. A lot of times when it came to a fight, I'm smart enough to know guns can come out. I'm conscious enough. I have enough pride, swallow my pride enough to know that. But I was scared of. I got to stop at 40 minutes. My lip getting busted. So here's the thing: you got POWs being sold from Africa, right? And so we always blame white cultures. America was the last country to have slavery. America was not the first country to have slavery. We're the last one, and we're the first one to end it. So we weren't a whole country yet. The United States of America never had slavery. So I wish I would have made that point earlier, by the way, because who's going to watch this long? But you have America we never had slavery. It was Britain trying to take over America, sending slaves here, possibly. This is speculation. Possibly not sending us the POWs, the prisoners of war slaves, which those are honorable people, right? Generally. So then you have the killers, slaves. And so back then, so you see somebody hang, some of the pictures of hanging. Everybody got hung. White people were hung for murdering people. They were hung. And sometimes you have the ones that were released from prison for being criminals, they're hating on the POW slaves, and they kill a POW slave. And then you see somebody get hung. That's because they killed their best. One slave kills their best slave for being a snitch or whatever. They're mad at him. They hated him because he would get along with the slave masters, and they got along peacefully and sometimes loved each other. Actually, believe it or not, you'd have situations where the bosses and the employees loved each other. So the difference is, and they had a lot of peaceful. They didn't have there's a lot of situations where they weren't abusive slaves, but the problem with the slavery still was, and they'll shut you up. You can't dare say slavery was good. I didn't say slavery was good. I said that people got along, and the Bible teaches you, if I'm a slave to somebody, the Bible teaches me to try to get along and win my slave master over to God. So what people do, Daniel Boone in the North, he would buy slaves and release them, tear up their contract. They get to buy their freedom. He was buying their freedom. So he did that, and other people do that for a good slave. But are they going to buy the murderers, the guy that's killing people, the one that is a prisoner? They bought the prisoners of war that were honorable slaves who got along and waited for the right time to get their freedom. They waited, So the freedom was, now they can have land. Now they can have their own house. Now they can work and get paid. That's slavery. You're not working and get paid. You have a quarters. You don't have your own property. That's the problem with slavery. Now, the part where they're abusing people, that's abuse of slave masters. It's not all the slave masters aren't like that. They actually developed a bond, and there's many stories of slaves that became like family with the master group or whatever, and they were probably given a very good free quarters, maybe guaranteed that quarters the rest of their life to live. So that's what they leave out of Black History Month. They leave all that out because they want to keep everybody segregated, and then they switch and lie and act like it's the Republicans. Republicans ended slavery. Abraham Lincoln's birthday should be celebrated. Abraham Lincoln should be celebrated for it. So Black History Month should celebrate. We got freedom from slavery. Thank you, Abraham Lincoln. Thank you, Republican Party. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So everybody was not an ancestor of slaves. Most of them are not ancestors of slaves. So a lot of black folks in the Democrat Party are ancestors of the slave masters who sold slaves in Africa, moved here, and they're still angry we ended slavery. And it's not that they're just angry about the slavery specifically, but specifically they like communism, they like government power, and that's what that did. Slavery empowered them the same way communism does, and gives them that authority. And so, you know what? I'm going to have to do a part 2 and end it here. And I hope this downloads. It might not even download. I got to wait 3 hours or whatever to see if it works. But it didn't work at 50 minutes, and I'm at 41 minutes. So I don't know how it took that long. I should have skipped all the background stuff. But I got to go. I have to. Bye.